Hello and welcome. You're watching Nothing But the Truth. A book published next week raises disturbing questions about Hindu-Muslim relations in India, as well as about how Muslims are treated in the country. At times it points the finger of responsibility at the Congress party, sometimes even at Jawaharlal Nehru himself. The book is called, and here it is, Being the Other, the Muslim in India. Its author is the well-known journalist and commentator Saeed Naqvi. Today he's my guest. Saeed Naqvi, I want to start with a sentence from your introduction as well as a sentence from your epilogue. You say in your introduction, this is a chronicle of my growing disillusionment and disappointment with the direction in which the country is heading. In your epilogue you say, we, that is India's Hindus and Muslims, have lived in a state of uninstitutionalized apartheid for decades, even centuries. Am I right in coming to the conclusion that you're disenchanted with the state of Hindu-Muslim relations in India? Actually, you're deeply concerned.
Would you not be, Karan? We all are. I think the way they have, this would not be, I would not have said this about 20 years ago. I may not have said this before Babri Masjid. After Babri Masjid, which is 6th of December 1992, things have been deteriorating. And this deterioration has not happened day before yesterday.
It's been cumulatively building up.
The fault was in the way we began. The fault was at the beginning.
I'll come to the way we began because you're absolutely right. That's where the problem starts. But I want to actually, oddly enough, come to the end first. There's a hint in your epilogue that things could be getting worse. You write, never before have we had it so bad. Not a day passes without someone questioning the legitimacy of the Indian Muslim, a call for us to be super patriots to prove our patriotism. If I'm right in my interpretation, how do you see the future?
The future is in the present. If you open the front page of the Indian Express day before yesterday, you have these two young men being made to eat cow dung paste with urine in it. And then, but the wonderful thing about this Indian system is that that very evening television showed them. So the revolting nature of that particular episode was also exposed. Therefore, the contest is still on. If it would be false, it would be wrong to say that I am all pessimistic. No, it could go very wrong. This is not a good sign.
The potential for it to go very wrong is there. And
that is
the worrying part of it.
That is the worrying part of it.
Because
unless we diagnose why it is going this way, we will go this way.
Let's then come to the very beginning. You say that the problem began with the fact that the Muslims who'd opted to stay in India, the Muslims who had chosen deliberately not to go to Pakistan, were always treated differently. You write, politicians, officials, and a largely Hindu police force would work progressively against them decade after decade. It's not just individual prejudice that they faced, the system itself.
There was an institutionalized attitude which began at the very beginning. I mean, if you go through, you see, these are delicate things to raise when the situation already is so volatile. And yet, they should be, I think, discussed, Karan. The police force. The very first riots, you know, that took place and Muslims were running out of Mehroli in Delhi, Mountbatten was around. Nehru was very upset. Gandhiji was upset. And he asked Sardar Patel, look, what are you doing? He's saying you're only giving the Hindus a very bad name. He said he was not worried that India is getting a bad name. It's his quote. He says, Gandhiji is only giving Hindus a very bad name because we are doing the best. If Muslims were very well armed, he said. And so therefore you are already prejudiced at the time when partition takes place. And in the independent India is barely sprouting when you have the first Home Minister turn around and say that people in Mehroli were very well armed, and that is why the police force would have to take very tough measures.
But was it the individual prejudice, was it the individual attitude of individuals at the top that was the problem, or was it that the system, in the way it worked, the mindset and thinking of the entire country was colored by a prejudice? Individuals or system or the whole country?
We made a mistake. Pandit Nehru made a mistake, and we made a mistake in believing him. Pandit Nehru imagined, if he imagined that the galaxy that surrounded him, his entire cabinet thought of Muslims as he did, then he was mistaken.
In fact, you say a very telling thing about him. You write of him that his belief that India, after being separated on Hindu-Muslim lines, could be secular was self-delusion.
Yes.
He believed that because it made him feel good, you write, but it wasn't a reflection of reality. In other words, this was something that kept him personally, individually content, but it was a way of blinding himself to the truth.
I think they were all getting old, and he says that. They were all getting old and they were wanting to get to power. Nehru himself admitted in Shanti Niketan, and my witness for that conversation is the late Nikhil Chakravarti. He said he admitted there. He says, look, we did not consult the people. It was all done by the politicians.
You're talking about partition.
Partition.
In other words, partition was done to suit the interests of individuals or a party at a particular time, overriding the fact that it would be disastrous for the country.
Including, yes, it would be disastrous for the country. They did it to get to power. It's a delicate thing. Again, I repeat, on the pain of being repetitious, Karan, it's a delicate matter. What we had, your parents had, they were serving the British under the British Raj. The idea here seems to have been that we will glide seamlessly from British Raj to Hindu Raj. But since there were going to be so many Muslims who believed in Nehru, we shall have this veneer of secularism, and the secular argument was advanced very diligently and very carefully because Kashmir had to be kept.
But you're suggesting the secular argument was not just self-delusion and self-deception, it was also a veneer of deception for the Muslims too.
For everybody.
It was an attempt to fool them.
It was. It fooled them in the end. After all, look, all that is happening is because of the mistakes that the successive governments made, of which naturally the maximum blame must be taken by the Congress party.
It's not just, in fact, Nehru, you rightly pointed out, you in your book give the maximum blame to the Congress party. You say that after pointing out that Jinnah was simply using Pakistan and partition as a ploy, which in fact the Congress could have circumvented, this is what you write. Partition, in a way, was the gift the Congress gave to the Hindu right, which in the fullness of time is today's Hindutva. In other words, their attitude to partition in those critical years was in fact two-faced. Publicly they may have been against it, privately they were working towards it because this is what suited their ambitions, their interest and their character.
Immediately after Nehru, a person who became Prime Minister, one assumes, had Nehru's trust and Nehru's confidence, because Nehru was a towering figure.
You're talking of Shastri.
I'm Shastri. He goes to war with Pakistan in 1965, well done, and immediately the first person he contacts is Guru Golwalkar, and he says that national defense, civil defense in the country will be taken over by the RSS. So you had civil defense volunteers all over North India.
And this in a sense gives the game away.
This is, yes.
In fact, you say something else. You say in your book that not a single senior and important congressman had any sympathy for the 90 million Muslims who stayed behind in India. And you add, it was impossible for Nehru not to have known this.
That's right. It was either a case of great self-delusion that it was not he was adored, there's no doubt about it. He managed it. He was mesmeric. We could not say Nehru in our house. It had to be Panditji. It had to be Pandit Nehru. He was revered.
But the truth was not what was revered. It was an image that was revered. The truth
he
was
had
something
a
else.
persona. He had that persona. He wore. Muslims loved him. He had this rose in his button, in Sherwani buttonhole. He spoke Urdu when he lost his temper, and he was very much part of the Awadh composite culture, of which I am a creature, and I repeatedly make that point here. He was very much to us, not Gandhiji, not Sardar Patel, not Babu Rajendra
And yet
Prasad.
in your book you believe that Nehru was often complicit in what was happening.
Of course.
He was often complicit and as much to blame as others who were more open and less discreet.
If he was not Karan, then we are talking about a person. You know, he comes across like a virtuous young man who played piano in a brothel without knowing what went on upstairs. And I don't think Nehru was such a fool. He was a very intelligent man. He was a remarkable man in many ways, but this weakness of his, the manner in which he sucked up to Mountbatten.
Let's come to what you say about Vallabhbhai Patel. For the first 3 years after independence, those critical years after partition, he was the deputy prime minister, clearly the second most important man at times as home minister, perhaps even more important than the prime minister. You accept a comment and conclusion on him written by Lord Wavell, India's second last viceroy, as well as a comment written by Michael Breacher, Nehru's biographer, that Patel was communal. But Rajmohan Gandhi, who's written the seminal biography on Patel, comes to a very different conclusion.
Yes, there are many people who have. There are divergent views on that. In fact, the actor who acted Patel in Gandhi, the film, what was his name? Jaffrey, Saeed Jaffrey. He told me. I said, Saeed, was Patel communal? He said, I have got into his character. No, he is not communal.
But you say he is.
No, of course, I am. There is two divergent evidences available there, but if you see his actions, he, in Hyderabad, I didn't want to raise Hyderabad, in Hyderabad, he and Nehru are in conflict. Nehru sends Pandit Sundar Lal to see what has happened there. And Patel keeps that report under wraps. He says, no, this report is not to be made public. Pandit Sundar Lal report. And what does it reveal? That 40,000 people, independent, India is already independent. The Congress government has been formed. 40,000 Muslims were killed by in two separate, it's a confusing...
Your book calls it a Muslim massacre.
The remarkable...
So you're saying that Patel's attitude to that particular report and the hiding of the fact that 40,000 were killed is proof that Patel was a Hindu communist.
The various people who spoke, who knew Patel, who knew Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel in those days, that is the... You see, don't forget, I come from a Congress family. They were very close to Panth. They were very close to
Actually,
Nehru.
I'll interrupt you there, because even about Panth you have something very interesting to reveal, and that's the point at which you begin to suggest that the communalism that afflicts the country today, that the Muslim cleansing that we suspect is happening in Muzaffarnagar actually goes back to the 50s, because you say that in the 50s when Panth was chief minister and Golwalkar was the RSS chief, 2 trunkloads of evidence was found of documents meticulously showing how the RSS planned to get up to mischief, to breed communalism and divide people, and Panth did nothing. And you suggest in your book this is clear proof of Congress and Panth's personal complicity.
This is, in fact, these are words of Rajeshwar Dayal, who was the first Home Secretary of UP. He, in fact, reports this matter in his book.
But you accept it as truth?
Well, why not? If Rajeshwar Dayal, as an ICS
he's
officer...
the only account we have of this.
Well, I mean, let us... You want me to be a skeptic on that one? You want me to doubt that one? I have a feeling that that should be played because there is no other evidence. You are saying, well, I'll concede to you that there is no other evidence to prove that that particular, those two trunk incidents is known to anybody else. I have not heard it except from Mohanlal Gautam, who was also in Pantji's cabinet, and later Chandrabhan Gupta, whom my family knew very well.
Now, this is the conclusion you come to about that particular story, and I'm quoting. Pant later became Union Home Minister in Nehru's cabinet. Was Nehru complicit? Or are we to continue to grant him the benefit of the doubt? You're clearly saying you believe Nehru was complicit. You, Saeed Naqvi, are no longer prepared to grant Nehru the benefit of the doubt.
No, I'm not. He knew. If he did not know, what did he do about it?
In which case, the difference between Nehru and, say, Vallabhbhai Patel, who you outrightly call communal, is a veneer of sophistication to disguise and hide, but not really much more. Nehru was sophisticated enough to hide it. He spoke Urdu. He had that rose in his lapel. He had this image with the Muslims, so they were deceived, as you said a moment ago, fooled. But actually, their attitude towards Muslims and Hindus was the same. That's what you're suggesting.
Well, we all have multiple identities. Panditji had his identity, which was very Urdu, very urbane, very Awadhi, very much part of that elegant culture, and yet there was a part of him which was very Brahminical. He thought that Pandit had to rule. He was very proud of his Pandit background and his Pandit antecedents. Oh, he is very, very proud of that.
This is the communal side of Nehru.
This is the other side of Nehru.
And the veneer disguised it for some.
There are two sides. Multiple identities. This is one side of Nehru's.
So one of Nehru's identities is a communal identity.
He compromised. He set India on a path which is the way it is today.
Now, there is in your book a peculiar, for some it will be distressing, for others it will be controversial illustration of the way Muslims were treated at that time. And you also suggest that this is an illustration of Nehru's own complicity. And it's to do with his sister, Vijay Lakshmi Pandit. You suggest that she had a secret love affair leading to a secret marriage with the Muslim editor Saeed Hussain, who then went on to become India's ambassador in Egypt. But you have no proof of that secret love affair. You have no proof of that secret marriage.
I have not said that. I said this was an allegation. There are members of Sayyid Hussein's family who believe and who have told me, whom I have contacted. They in fact go ahead and say her name was Swaroop, and it was all changed. The Vijay Lakshmi
but her name was Swaroop. It's not an allegation.
Yes.
The parental name she got was Swaroop. Vijay Lakshmi was the name she got after her marriage.
You don't know
but
the story.
The point is that in repeating that story in this detail, you give it a credibility. At no point do you seem to be skeptical of it. You seem to be actually approving of it, because you even quote your uncle, Wasi Naqvi, as an element of proof and support and corroboration.
Oh, you ask anyone from the Kajju family, from the any of the Kashmiri Pandits in that area of Awadh, you will have the story commonly known. It is not an unknown yarn, but yes, there is no proof. The wedding, where is the document? The wedding document. If anyone is raising that issue, then it is very important for that person to conceal this
Except for the fact that the one person you could have contacted to get some sort of corroboration or denial is Vijay Lakshmi Pandit's daughter, Nayantara Sehgal. She's alive, she's available. She would have, I'm sure if you'd contacted her, addressed this issue. But your book doesn't mention you've spoken to her at all.
I spoke to Vijay Lakshmi Pandit herself in her house in Dehradun.
About this marriage?
About various things in which this marriage also came up. And she was, "Arey, usko bhool jao."
But you don't mention that in your book.
I have not mentioned that.
But why? Because that would be critical.
Because there's so much I have not mentioned. I mean, it would have been a big tome like that.
Except that if she said to you, "Arey, usko bhool jao," that is suggestive of corroboration, because she's asking you to forget. And people might interpret that corroboration. It would be essential to your story, yet you've left it out.
Arey Sayyid Hussain ko bhulo. That is what she said. She was a very, very delightfully lively lady. I enjoyed 2.5 hours of conversation with her, all on record.
In that book, you say, and I'm quoting, Hussein's family in Dhaka has documents which reveal a great deal more. Yes. But you don't say what those documents reveal. You stop after that sentence.
Well, I mean, because you want me to write, then I'll have to write another book about Vijay Lakshmi Pandit's love affair or marriage or whatever it was.
So you actually have
It is
documents
an
that prove it.
anecdote. I have a book. I have a book on Sayyid Hussain in which there's a great deal of material. Yes.
Of the
There
love
is a
affair,
book
of the marriage.
by of their together in Washington, in various parts of America when they were together. You see, he did not only become ambassador to Cairo. He was India's ambassador at large in the United States,
Sure.
in England,
That I accept, and
wherever.
he was an extremely well-known man. But what you're saying also is that you have a lot more evidence to support this theory that they had a secret love affair and a secret marriage, which you withheld.
No, I have not. I have not said that in that document.
But you're saying it now.
I'm telling you, yes, I have a book. And in that book, there's a lot of material, lot of pictorial material. He seemed to have been, in fact, he wears a bow tie exactly like yours, and Vijay Lakshmi Pandit standing with him in New York, and it's a terrific.
Do you have any sense of conscience about writing in this way about someone who's now dead and can't defend herself? And her children will be upset, her grandchildren could be upset. Do you have any conscience about that? Because you don't have proof, you're simply reporting what was said and rumored, and if you do have proof, you've consciously withheld it as you suggested. So there's a certain moral dilemma here, isn't there?
No, there's no moral dilemma here, because I know that various members of the family, there's not only one sister, there's another sister.
Two.
Chandralekha is
and Rita Dar, who passed away.
And who passed away. There are various versions. And I don't want to go into that, because then it will become an interview about Vijay
Let's
Lakshmi
pull out
Pandit's.
Vijay Lakshmi Pandit. Let's come back to what I think for many could be a point of conversation, for some a point of controversy. Not so much the fact that you point the finger of responsibility at Congress, but that you've done it at Jawaharlal Nehru. The BJP will perhaps applaud you for this, because they will say this is Nehru being shown in his right light.
That would be the unfortunate part of it.
The Congress will be upset. They'll say that you've been prejudiced. You've made yourself a creature of a political tug of war, with the BJP upholding your interpretation, the Congress understandably running it down. Does that worry you?
I don't think so. I think the BJP is targeting Nehru because it wants to discredit the secular agenda with which he is associated. I am questioning Nehru for not having had the vision that what he was doing at partition would have these consequences without having the team.
In fact, you're going a step further. You're targeting Nehru for the fact that his secularism was skin deep. It was part of a veneer. It fooled the Muslims. Actually, deep down, he was Brahminical.
He should have known.
And he was not as secular as
There's nothing
people.
wrong with being Brahminical. I mean, I'm from UP, and the most secular people in that state, have been Brahmins whom I've known. I have grown up among Brahmins.
But remember, you also say that he hid from himself deliberately something he couldn't have denied, knowing that not a single senior congressman had sympathy for the Muslims who stayed in India.
There
he wasn't
was
prepared
not
to
a
admit
single. There was not a single senior congressman in that galaxy that we mentioned who knew anything about Ghalib, Mir, all that Urdu culture that we associate with,
But you know what
which is the essence of our being.
But then what you're doing, and this is why Congress will dislike it and why BJP will
Let
applaud
them-
it, you've taken the mask off Nehru. You've revealed the real Nehru, not the sophisticate, not the secular, not the rose-wearing, Urdu-talking
He
image
was that too.
Muslims like. He was that too, but there was a reality behind it which you've revealed, which to others wasn't apparent.
Well, I don't think people did not know this. People should have. You read Maulana Azad even after the big letdown, in his book he dedicates it to Nehru, my friend and comrade. But if you read those 30 pages, his disappointment is very transparent.
Absolutely, and what you've done is to underline the disappointment. You
Underline for emphasis.
Maybe. But the point is, you worried that this could make you controversial, that you and your book...
No. It was something I said, some truths have to be told. You see, I'll tell you why this truth had to be told. The truth had to be told, Karan, because we would continue in this manner unless we arrive at a certain conclusion. And I do not know whether you will have the time to discuss that conclusion, so I am keen to introduce that at this stage.
At the end of the day, the motto of our country is Satyamev Jayate. No matter how hard and bitter, no matter how controversial the truth must be told because it is the truth. And if you believe this is the truth,
Yes.
then you will do yourself an injustice.
By holding it back.
A pleasure
Thank you.
talking to you.
Thank you, Karan.